Thanks so much for having me. You know, not a good place to put this water. You know, I'm reminded when I walked in here about the Jewish man who tells his son the secret to life. He says, son, you want to get ahead in life? Math. That's the answer. You do well in math, you'll be a superstar. Sends a Jewish kid off to school. Kid comes back with his first test, 70. Dad says, what's the problem, son? Are you not listening to me? Math. If you don't do well on your next math test, I'm sending you to Catholic school. Sends a Jewish kid off. He comes back with his next test, 60. Dad says, that's it? I'm sending you to Catholic school. He sends him off to Catholic school. 3 weeks later, the kid comes back with his first test, 100. Dad says, what's the secret? He says, Dad, first day I walked into class, looked up, saw that guy nailed to the plus sign, said they're serious about math. Understanding what motivates you, what motivates people is the key to success. And the ability of you to improve your skills and to think about ways in which you can provide an exceptional experience for the passenger and for those around you is critical to your success. And one of the ways to do that is to understand the way you think. Most of us have, been brought up based on the experiences we've had. Maybe we had some formal training. Most of our experiences are based on the job type of experiences. And so I thought it'd be helpful if you guys would take a look. I handed out a quiz, a little short quiz, so you guys can take a look at it. For some of you who have looked at it, great. For some of you who haven't, it says, what are you thinking? And when you look at this quiz, and we're going to go over a couple of the questions, it's going to change the way you think. So let's look at a couple of these questions and let's see how good you are at the way you think. The first question is, Joanna and Jackie were born on the same day of the same month of the same year. They have the same mother and father, yet they are not twins. How is that possible? Now, I've given this quiz out to probably 8,000, and I can tell you that the range of answers is extraordinary. They were born in different years. There was a stepfather, somebody's mother's uncle's sister's brother. The answer is they're triplets. But the thinking pattern that you have is immediately to think there's a trick to this, that there is something that I have to look beyond because the way our thinking is it's solution-oriented. We may listen at 125 words a minute, but we think at 3,000. So think about the ingestion of what information you're getting and what that means. Let's look at the second one. Imagine you're alone in a boat with a large hole in the bottom. Sharks are swimming around you on all sides, and the boat is sinking fast. How do you survive? Stop imagining. People think, for the moment, there must be some angle, maybe they're on dry land, maybe there's all these different things, but it's changing the way you approach your thinking pattern will change the way you live and react. Let's look at the third one. Tom's mother has 3 children. One's named April, one's named May, and the third is? Absolutely. The amount of Junes that I get is extraordinary. But again, conceptually, think about what the question calls for and what is your tendency in your thinking pattern. And most of us also jump over words because we're looking to solve a problem rather than understanding it. An airplane crashed in the field. Every single person in the aircraft died, but 2 people survived. How come? They're married. It said every single person died. It's all how you read things. Don't make assumptions. When you make assumptions, we know what that does. A murderer is condemned to death. He's got a choice of 3 rooms, everybody. One's full of raging fires. The second, assassins with loaded guns. And the third, hungry lions who haven't eaten in 3 years. What room should he choose? The lions, because they're dead. They haven't eaten in 3 years, they're dead. The assumptions you make about things and what you don't assume is also very important. And recognizing that will change the way you approach problems, situations, and opportunities. The last one, last two actually, but one of my favorites is the next one. Man's wearing black mask, all black, black shoes, black socks, black pants, walking down the street, cars coming direct at him. The street lights are out. The car's lights are out. However, at the last minute, the car swerves and avoids the man. How is that possible? Daylight. It's daytime. Don't make the assumption because the lights are out and all the other things that occur that it's dark out. Again, it's the way our mind works, our mind working faster and not thinking. And the integration of information inward to the way in which we process and roll it outward has a profound effect. One of my favorites, what do you sit on, sleep on, and brush your teeth with? 19,000 people take this test. 4 got it right. 3 of them were me because I had the answers. What do you sit on, sleep on, and brush your teeth with? A chair and a bed and your toothbrush. I didn't say it was one item. Don't make assumptions. All of you in your flexible environment or inflexible environment, depending on how you look at it, have to be adaptable, have to respond, have to react quickly, are required to anticipate absolutely everything and nothing. And so your ability to assimilate information and to respond back, the ability to make the right decisions at the right time, is quintessential to your success. And so the concept is, how can you approach this? How can you use this data and information to help you? Well, let's start with the idea that you really have to have a positive attitude. You really have to have a solution-oriented mentality. You really have to have an attitude that says, no matter what happens, it's always good. And it reminds me of a story of the famous king from years ago. And he has this trusted right-hand man. And everywhere he goes, his advisor, the right-hand man's with him. And every decision he makes, the right-hand man is with him. And every time that they have to make a difficult decision, the guy on the right, his advisor, says, "This is good. Don't worry, boss. This is good. Don't worry, your highness. This is good." And as is common in the olden times, hunting is a huge sport. And every time they go out hunting, of course, the advisor sets up all the guns and the ammunition and orchestrates the tasks and the hunt and where they're going. One day, when he's setting up the ammunition, he unfortunately sets up one of the guns and it misfires and it blows off the thumb of the king. The king is furious. And he says, "I can't believe you did this." And the advisor says, "Don't worry, this is good." He's like, "How can you say it's good? How can you blew off my finger? I'm sentencing you to jail. You are going to go into the dungeon forever." He puts the advisor in jail. The advisor says, "Don't worry, this is good." Let's fast forward a year. Now the king is out hunting again with new people, and because he doesn't have his trusted advisor, he enters into the world of cannibals, and they capture him. And they're skewering him up, and it's great. In some of my seminars, I have this nice roaster that I get on, and it spins around as I'm doing this. And they're skewering up, and they're about to cook him, and they realize he doesn't have a part of a thumb. And in the cannibalistic society, you can't eat someone who's not whole. So they set him free. He races back to the kingdom. Goes to the dungeon, he's beside himself. He says to the advisor, I can't believe. The advisor says, "Don't worry, this is good." He says, "I can't believe I imprisoned you for a year. And I put you in this situation, and I feel horrible." The advisor says, "Don't worry, this is good." He says, "How could you say that this is good? I imprisoned you for a year." He said, "Because if I was with you, I would have been eaten." How you look at things changes the way you solve them. Change the way you think, and you will change the way you live. Change the way you think, and you will change the way you feel. If you approach that mentality with a solution-oriented attitude, you're going to be successful. And one of the things that's interesting about that is this mentality of combining a professionalism that you have, a mentality of having this positive attitude, with what I call an impatience with mediocrity. You know, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, and so don't you want that impression to be the best? There's a story of a friend of mine who graduates from Harvard #1 in his class and goes to work for the Secretary of State years ago, and the first question that the Secretary of State has for this individual is, listen, I need you to do a draft of a memo about the withdrawal from the Iraq War and whether it makes sense. The guy says, okay. He spends the whole day, spends 8 hours working in this memo, does this incredible detailed 5-page memo, explaining the whole thing out, putting all kinds of citations in it, and he puts it on the Secretary of State's inbox. He comes back the next day, first thing in the morning, there's a sticker, a post-it note on the report that says, you can do better. Ah, mortified. He doesn't know what to do. He spends the next 3 days working all day, all night. He even talks to a senator and maybe a congressman, and then he does this 12-page memorandum. And he knows that the secretary's coming in at 8:30 the next morning, so he gets there at 8 o'clock. When he gets there, already this memo who's handed in already has another sticker on it. It says, you can do better. He's devastated, doesn't know what to do. He decides to spend the next 2 weeks talking to every legislator, senator, gets the declassified documents, goes and does the most incredible thing, sets up a meeting with the Secretary of State, takes his papers and says, Secretary, this is the absolute best possible job I can do, and hands it to him. And the Secretary of State says, okay, now I'll read it. What is your best effort? Is your best effort going to be mailing it in, doing it from the come, or is your best effort going to be the best possible work you do in a given situation? A friend of mine was a car waxer, and I used to admire how much detail he would spend in, getting every aspect. A toothbrush with the tire rims. Say like a day from now, there's dust and there's dirt. I don't care. What matters is now, when that guy gets that car, it's got to be the greatest thing that ever was. Is that your mentality? If your mentality is like that, you will be successful beyond your dreams. And that mentality is important because it will govern, again, the way you think and the way you live. And I think if you keep in mind that, you'll understand that you can marry your skills to this kind of mentality and be extremely successful. And what do I mean by that? That means to take the skills you have, that is the communication skills, the listening skills, the safety skills, the culinary prowess that you have, and to marry that to your effective communication and your effective success. And there's an expression I used about going after what you want, and I said, he who wants milk should not sit himself down in a pasture and wait for the cow to back up to him. Let me say that again. He who wants milk should not sit himself down in the pasture and wait for the cow to back up to him. Meaning, if you want something, you need to go after it. You need to have an impatience of mediocrity. You need to have a mentality that says, I want to do the best possible job I can do, and I'm going to do what it takes to do that. And once you do that, what happens is people will start to remember you. People will start to understand. People will start to make you their prized, irreparable catch. And that's very important. I as a lawyer, I've tried cases all over the country, and I've worked for billion-dollar cases and all these things you see on television and this incredible stuff. And I would go in and try cases in different states. And if you think about the way I speak, I kind of had a South Florida, 800 words a second, fast talking. You go to Oklahoma, okay, where their belts are bigger than their shoes, and they're talking more slow and kind of like this, you better make sure that you adapt because they have a different communication scheme. You go to New York, you go to LA, I went to Jasper, Texas. They have a different kind of mentality. How you adapt, how you know your person. And I never forget trying a case in Oklahoma, and I usually get these cases when they're a mess, and they say, let Scott fix it. He's the only guy who'll come in and try cases, that are just unwinnable. Okay, well, what I would do is, in order to do the best I possibly could do, I wanted to learn about the judge. So how did I learn about the judge? Well, what I would do is I would send somebody into the courtroom before the trial and watch the judge. And so this particular judge, top female judge, one of the first chief judges in Oklahoma, she used a rule book. This big, thick rule book, and every motion, every hearing she would have, she'd go to the rule book, and she had the rule book tabbed and different color tabs and yellow, purple, green highlighters, and she had certain pages she'd used so much they were frayed. And so I wasn't going to get to see this judge until the first day of trial, because there were other lawyers handling it. So when I went into court the first day of trial in this monster trial, I had a rule book just like hers, tabbed just like hers, with the same color tabs, same highlighted pink, red, orange, blue, with a yellow tab that was frayed off to the left. And she loved page 86 for some reason. So when I started, hi, I'm Scott Major. I know you don't know me. I'm from the firm of Major. And we've got a bunch of motions for you, but let me just tell you, Judge, I think in talking about these motions, page 86 is rather instructive. And she went like this. Opposite me was the biggest lawyer in Oklahoma, who was also best friends with the judge. And on breaks, they would talk about the sermon that they went to and the picnic that they're attending. And okay, so you couldn't be against anybody else than the best person in the world. But by doing that, the judge identified with me. And when I would turn to pages, I would use, and Judge, I yellow tabbed this, I blue tabbed this, and the judge is bounced. Needless to say, by the end of this very lengthy trial, we won. When we finished the trial, the judge walked down, walked past the opposing counsel, came up to me and say, how did I do? Okay? What you do will define you. How you prepare and how you approach your job, your craft, will define you. There's no reason in the world not to be the absolute best you can possibly be in every way, shape, and form. And when you talk about communication, because that's really what you're going to be doing, there's two components of communication. The ability to articulate, to get information out, and the ability to ingest information, the ability to understand what people are saying. Listening. Less than 2% of people in the world have had any formal education in listening. Okay? God made 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you talk. The concept being that the more information that you gather, the better you can to solve a particular situation. So understand, listening is a very effective tool. And a great test that you guys can use is when you leave today, go home to your significant other, friend, or anybody who didn't appear that's out there, and ask them the following questions. The idea is to ask an open-ended question that does not yield a yes or no answer. So, somebody went shopping, and you say, tell me what you bought at the supermarket. Or, tell me about the 3 things you did today. And see if you can get an answer that's less than 1 word, and then ask a question from the answer. And see how far you can go before you get a 1-word answer. It's extraordinary what you will learn. First, that you don't really ask good questions, so you're not really listening to the person. And secondly, what you will learn about people. When I do these boot camp seminars where we do multiple days, and I send the people home, they come back the next day and say, I couldn't believe it, I didn't know, my husband was mad at me, my wife was mad at me for 3 days ago, had nothing to do with anything, I asked them about shopping, all of a sudden we're talking about 16. You learn about how people really feel and what they really think when you drill past the superficials, how are you and what are you doing. In your craft, Knowledge is power. The more you know, the better you can solve a problem. Happens really incredibly in safety. And while I'm not here to talk about safety, the concept of the more you know, the better you can assess and respond. So that should apply in everything you do. So try that test. And in communication, what many people don't realize is that people don't really necessarily respond or react just to the words you say. You know, they did all these research statistics and they found out that 55% of people derive the meaning of words from facial expressions, 38% from how the words are said, and 7% from the actual words. So, if you think about it, and I have a little smile power handout for you. If you think about it, when you smile, when you're positive, when you're enthusiastic, I'm just learning to come out of my shell, but there tends to be a response that is probably more healthy and more positive than when you're Mr. and Mrs. Mopester. I can't believe, and you wouldn't believe, and oh my God, and the black cloud, and the Linus blanket, and I mean, if I do a speech and I go, okay, everybody, I guess we got to get through this, so bear with me. Okay, and by the way, let me go to my next point. And then there are important things as a flight attendant. You need to be able to be good at a flight attendant, to do good things, so you can understand that the facial expressions, the way in which you deliver something, has a huge impact. Pay attention to that. If you do, you're going to be tremendously successful. How you communicate. So we got the 55% of the facial expression, we got the 38% having to do with the way in which words are delivered. If I use the simple expression, "Are you kidding me?" and then I change the inflection of one word, it changes the entire meaning. Are you kidding me? That means, are you kidding me as opposed to somebody else? Are you kidding me? Are you being serious or are you really kidding me? Are you kidding me as opposed to someone else? How you inflect, how you intonate, what you say has an impact. Be careful how you communicate, but also use it as a weapon because it can be very effective. And as you can imagine, if you're in front of a jury or a customer or you're at a restaurant, think about when you walk into a restaurant. You are immediately judging the server. There's like a 9-second time frame from the time they utter something to the time you've concluded whether or not you're going to tolerate their existence. Why do you do that? Because it is natural. You want to feel important. You want to make sure you're served. Somebody comes up and they deliver, this great introduction, and they're telling you wonderful things about the menu and so forth and so on. You're more likely to be warm and open, and your meal is a lot more likely to be better. I just did a huge presentation to surgeons at these major hospitals, and they did statistics, and they found out that patients are less likely to sue doctors that they like. Okay? So don't be a jerk. Okay? And when you understand that, it's just working on the human behavior, the human condition. It's understanding that what you say means something. And that you need to understand that what you say may not be what you mean, and what you mean may not be what you say. Practice that and you will see. And if you don't think impressions have an impact, they did this big study and they put these students in a room. And they said to the students, listen, we have this professor and he is so dynamic and brilliant and everybody loves him. We want you to rate him when he's done. And he did this speech and 87% of the people thought his speech was incredible. In the neighboring room, they said, listen, there's a speaker coming in, and he's really not that good. I'm sorry I'm going to have to bore you with his hour-long presentation, but this is life. But please, I still need you to rate him. Hopefully you'll have a different opinion than me, but listen to him. The same speaker went next door. 32% liked him. So that means that first impressions are not only lasting, but what people anticipate will also be effective. And it's interesting, you know, I say that, therefore, when you have communication, you want to try to use connectables. And, you know, they did this PowerPoint presentation, and I was thinking, you know, I have all these slides, and I'm going to do these things. And then I said, you know, well, maybe I only need really one slide, you know. And the slide is really, okay, so I'm a flight attendant, I'm serving someone, and they ask for dessert, or I want to give them dessert, and I can give them a chocolate chip cookie, or I can give them one of these. If I give them this cookie, then what's going to happen is that's going to be much more of a conversation. Wow, look at that cookie. Oh my God, that's a cookie? Will you look at all that stuff that's on that cookie? Holy cow, we got to spend a couple of minutes talking about what that's all about. That's called a connectable. That means I just look good because I handed you something that then became a conversational. And they'll be like, where's that cookie? All the caterers that are in the back, you need to get that cookie. And you need to bring that cookie on board, because that cookie speaks to the people. So the concept being is that when you use connectables, I tell people when they're on, you know, flights, and you have people that don't speak the language necessarily because they don't speak English, so I can't come down and say, do you want a ham sandwich or fish? Make sure every menu has pictures. If you have a picture menu, then I walk up and they point to the picture. Not difficult to know what they want. So understanding that connectables, things which aid you, things which provide conversational pieces, whoever made that flight attendant's a genius. Okay? You didn't make the cookie. It doesn't matter. You know, they talk a lot in this world about, oh, you need to have culinary skills, because the better culinary skills you have, the better you're going to be at what you do. And the reason is primarily because statistics show that the presentation, as well as the food quality, is great, because your chef can make the food. You can buy the food, but the presentation. And again, think about the presentation. When you watch the first couple of videos when you got in here, there's the music and the videos, and we're all getting up, we're ready to dance, we're fired up. Why? Because the presentation has an impact, and you can't underestimate that in your process. And I'll tell you that in your occupation, you got to think out of the box. I mean, you have to think creatively. You have to keep in mind that there's oftentimes unique solutions, but they're right there in front of you. You know, there's the famous story about the shoe company, really famous shoe company, and they send the two salesmen to North Africa. And the first salesman calls back at 10 o'clock and he says, it's horrible. Nobody wears shoes. 15 minutes later, the next salesman calls back, it's incredible. Nobody wears shoes. What is your perspective? How will you think? Will you look at things differently? You know, my friend's a first grade teacher, and every year he goes in and he brings in apples. And he goes in front of the class and he says, it's got like a red apple, a green apple, and kind of different color apple. He says, okay, what color's the apple? People scream out, it's red, it's green, it's yellow. Tommy raises his hand in the back. Yeah, Tommy? White. White? Jeez, oh my God, what am I going to do? Tommy, apples are red, apples are green, they can be yellow, they can be a combination of colors. They're not white. Yeah, Tommy? Look inside. Apple's all white. So your perspective, how you look at things, will govern the way you solve things. So if you're a person who's going to absorb, who's going to be open-minded, who's going to understand the different types of solutions that are possible, your mentality is going to change. The way you live is going to change. And when you change that, it will change the way you feel. And keeping that in mind, you know, I remember a client coming to me once, and he was so fired up. I've got this new idea for a hair salon. Women are going to love it. Here's what it is. It's a salon that we serve wine and cheese, and we do foot massages for free while they're waiting for the hair, and while the perm is waiting, and we do hand massages, and we're going to have big screen TVs and music and dancing guys, and it's just going to be incredible. Can you help me set it up? Sure. I set it all up. He goes in. Oh, it's incredible. The success. He's going to charge a lot of money. He says, I charge more. Oh, and the women and the men came in by the zillions. He's doing incredibly. Unbelievable. What happens? About 4 months in, he comes to me. Oh, my God, the end of the world has come. You're not going to believe what happened. He actually calls me first before he comes in. And he says, I don't know what to do. My business is getting killed. What happened? A guy across the street opened a hair salon, and in the window it says $15 haircuts. Devastated. My life is over. I said, have no fear. Come and see me tomorrow. I have a solution for you. He comes in. I said, listen, I've made this sign. Looks a lot like this. I said, I want you to take the sign. I want you to put it in your window, and life will be grand again. He took the sign. He put the sign in his window. A week later, he said, life is grand again. What did the sign say? We fix $15 haircuts. What is your solution? How will you approach things? Recognizing that everything has its place, that everything's solvable, that mentality will breed virally in a productive way, will change not only you, but those around you. And if you do that, you're so much more likely to be successful. And you're so much more likely to be able to achieve whatever goal you think you can achieve. And by doing that, I think that changes the way that you think. And I'll leave you with a story. And that story is about a mentality of never giving up. And it's a story about frogs. These frogs are jumping in the forest, this crew of them. 5 frogs having just the time of their life. And they're hopping through the forest. And when they get done, they stop and they have a meal and they're all happy and they continue to hop and hop up. And unbeknownst to them, there's this hidden hole. And 2 of the frogs jump in by accident and they're stuck. And the other frogs are gathering around. These 2 frogs in the hole are jumping. They can't get out. And the 3 frogs up on top are just mortified. And they're saying, you're killing us. You got to stop jumping. This is just, we can't watch this. This is just so painful. You're not going to make it. You just can't. And the frogs keep jumping up. And finally, one of the frogs quits and dies. And the other frog is jumping, and they're screaming and waving their webbed hands and jumping up and down, and other frogs come around and they're waving, trying to tell the frog, you gotta stop. We can't watch this. This is horrible. By sheer miraculous nature, that frog jumps and gets out. The team of frogs is stunned. They go up to him and say, what motivated you? We were waving our hands and jumping up and down and saying the most horrible negative things. We couldn't believe. The frog said, I was deaf. I thought you were cheering for me. Never give up. If you never give up, if your mentality is one that is positive, if your mentality is solution-oriented, if your mentality is open, if your mentality is one of success, you will have all the achievement, all the advancement, all the enhancement, and all the success you could ever imagine. And for that, I wish you well. Thank you.